Memo-gate marches on, but the usual party lines are starting to break down a bit. If you've been out of the loop for the past few days, here's a quick primer to catch up. Earlier last week, the GOP-controlled House Intelligence Committee authorized the release of a memo written by Republican Devin Nunes, the chair, claiming the FBI abused its authority when it used that infamous dossier as part of its argument to extend surveillance on former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. The problem, according to Nunes, is that the FBI did not disclose to the court that that dossier was funded by Democrats in Hillary Clinton's campaign. Fast forwarded late last week, when Donald Trump signed off on that memo's release and has been claiming victory ever since, tweeting this memo totally vindicates Trump in probe. But the Russian witch hunt goes on and on. Of course, that's not the only opinion out there. Here's Democratic Congressperson Adam Schiff on ABC's This Week on the issue of whether the president was indeed vindicated.
Of course, not at all. And in fact, on the issue of collusion, what the memo indicates is the investigation didn't begin with Carter Page. It actually began with George Papadopoulos, someone who was a foreign policy advisor for candidate Trump, and someone who was meeting secretly with the Russians and talking about the stolen Clinton emails. So quite to the contrary, even this very flawed memo demonstrates what the origin of the investigation was, and that origin involved the issue of collusion.
Schiff, the lead Democrat, has in fact drafted his own memo. It's a 10-page point-by-point rebuttal of the Republican version, which, as of this taping, the Intelligence Committee has not yet voted to release, but at least 3 Republicans on the panel are signaling they will sign off, which is enough to get it through, assuming the president doesn't block it. And in response, Trump once again took to Twitter this morning to call Devin Nunes a man of tremendous courage and grit, who may someday be recognized as a great American hero, while giving a new nickname to Little Adam Schiff, who the president declared is desperate to run for a higher office and is one of the biggest liars and leakers in Washington. I guess the ground game has officially begun. Joining me to discuss our Suffolk professor and constitutional law expert, Renée Landers. Renée, it's good to see you.
Good to be here,
former federal prosecutor Brian Kelly, who tried the Whitey Bulger case, among others. He's now a partner at Nixon Peabody. Brian, it's good to see you, too.
Good to see you as well.
Assuming everything in this Nunes memo is accurate, and obviously a lot of people say it isn't, if it is accurate, does it demonstrate there were abuses under the foreign surveillance law or no?
I think it does.
How so?
I think whether you like Trump or hate Trump, what is in this memo is troubling.
What part?
The memo, when you go for a wiretap, and in this case they're going for a wiretap in the FISA court, you can't lie to the court and you can't omit material facts. And if this wiretap was based upon a political document, which the FBI indicated it was, they should have told that to the issuing judge.
But it also says in that memo that there was a Papadopoulos, who we all learned about, months before they even went to that court around Carter Page, which could have been the basis for the warrant to begin with, right? The wiretap.
I don't think it does say that. I've read it, and it clearly, the FBI, McCabe, who just stepped down, he indicated that but for that political dossier, there wouldn't have been a wiretap. And so my point is this. I'm not sure it is directly relevant to the ongoing probe, but it does raise troubling questions about the FISA process. They shouldn't be misleading the judges when the judges issue wiretaps. And if this wiretap is predicated
on no one's
alleging
misleading. They're alleging they may not have disclosed some information.
Well, that's a form of misleading.
Okay. Is Brian on to something there, Renée?
Well, I think that in an ideal world, the warrant application should have disclosed all the known facts.
Why not in a non-ideal world? Why wouldn't you disclose that anyway? Isn't that
well,
a
I mean, yes, it would be, but I don't think it's totally disqualifying. I mean, let's face it, in the real world, your friends and your closest allies are not the people who are going to complain to prosecutors about you. So almost always in any kind of prosecution or government investigation, somewhere there's someone who has an interest that's different than the target of the investigation.
Despite your conclusion, Brian, are you troubled by the release, even if it raises what you consider to be legitimate issues, troubling issues? Are you troubled by the fact that there was a decision to release this thing? Most experts say it's unprecedented.
Well, Congress has a legitimate oversight role. They created the FISA court. So if they want to investigate abuses in the FISA court system, they should. And here, what is also troubling is leading up to the release of this memo, there's all this hue and cry by the FBI that this was going to expose national security secrets. There's no way it does.
Well, speaking of no way, though,
that was a spacious argument, and it makes you wonder, why were they so upset that why would they raise phony complaints about national security when this memo does not address national security issues.
Well, but speaking of phony, though, this is not an oversight function. Oversight, you call witnesses. The head of the FBI offered to testify in front of this committee, and the Republicans said, we're not interested in hearing from you. Well, that's what you do when you want oversight, right? You hear from the key parties,
I think they put in here that the FBI did testify to their hearing, and then I think it was Trey Gowdy who went through all the evidence, compiled this document. I don't think this is necessarily Nunes' document. It's Gowdy's.
Speaking of Trey Gowdy, we should say he's one of the Republicans who did not line up behind the president here.
Right.
Most people remember him from the Benghazi investigations. Here's the outgoing Congressman Gowdy himself.
There is a Russia investigation without a dossier. So to the extent the memo deals with the dossier and the FISA process, the dossier has nothing to do with the meeting at Trump Tower. The dossier has nothing to do with an email sent by Cambridge Analytica. The dossier really has nothing to do with George Papadopoulos' meeting in Great Britain. It also doesn't have anything to do with obstruction of justice. So there's going to be a Russia probe even without a dossier.
Now, that runs directly counter to Trump saying that it vindicated Trump, in quotes.
No, I would agree. So, first of all, none of us here knows what was in the warrant application or the basis for the FISA court's decision because it's all, secret. However, and I say that, and I've been on record, I've written an article about a related issue, that these secret processes are troubling and can be subject to abuse because there's no public airing or opportunity for people to see like what would happen in a normal warrant application that was not
granted in almost every single case, by the way, which is troubling to some others as well.
That's exactly right. Now, the participants, the Justice Department and the FISA court judges, who are regular federal court judges, by the way, it's not some special secret court. It is a secret court, but special secret people. But they say that there's a lot of backing and forthing until there's evidence sufficient to justify the granting of the warrant. But I'm not here to defend that underlying process. But I don't think that this particular exposure here is any different than what goes on in the ordinary course.
But I think the timing here is troubling. They sought this warrant 2 weeks before the election, and they sought the warrant. They would not have sought the warrant without that political document. And that's what the FBI director testified to. So, and not only that, but so there's an FBI agent who will sign off on the affidavit, and then there's someone at DOJ who has to approve it. The DOJ person who approved it is beyond dispute an anti-Trump person, Sally Yates. She's the one who initially authorizes it.
But it's
Rod Rosenstein agreed to continue it.
It's been continuing.
There's four iterations. The first one's always the most important because it's the first time the FISA court sees it. She signs off on it and Comey's the affidavit.
But Brian, while you cite Sally Yates, every single other person who, Donald Trump, speaking of at the end of the campaign, said he had great respect for the courage of the FBI for reopening the Clinton investigation. And now when he's criticizing them, Trump appointees, from Stephen Boyd of the Justice Department, who said this would be extremely reckless, to his head of the FBI, to Rod Rosenstein, every single one of them are his own appointees. So there's something wrong with this picture, isn't there?
Well, I don't think Rosenstein is his appointee, is he?
Yes,
I think
he is.
Rosenstein
Yes, he is.
He's been a DOJ for a long time.
He has been, but
he's been there for a long time.
as Deputy Attorney General,
but
he is a Trump appointee.
I can't respond to every tweet the president makes, and I'm not here to do that. All I'm saying is that whether you like Trump or you don't like him, what is troubling about this FISA process in this case is that it's predicated on a political document. And
not entirely. No, we don't. We don't know the answer to that question. We know that that's in part.
The question being in part.
Okay. In part. It appears in part it was predicated on that document.
As a former prosecutor who obviously called FBI people to the stand, here's a poll. Since 2015, the public's respect for approval of the job the FBI does is down 12 points amongst Republicans, which historically are the strongest supporters of law enforcement. It's down 22 points. As a former federal prosecutor, I think this contributes to it, too. I assume you'd agree. Does that worry you as somebody who's got to call those men and women to the stand when people sitting in the jury box or sitting at home hearing the President of the United States saying this is a disgrace was his word, you can't trust these people? Does that bother you?
I don't think it helps anybody to demonize the FBI. By and large, they're a great organization. There's 30,000 members. If there's misconduct, it's by 3 or 4 of them, in this case for political reasons. Just like when Democrats demonize cops and allege all sorts of bad motivations.
That's a totally
criminals. we shouldn't do that. Because when they get into a courtroom, they've got a right to be believed.
But it's the President of the
like
United States who's demonizing these FBI people. What are you about to say?
No, I was about to say that I think that's a completely different issue, because we have, the
same issue.
The people on the street, and I actually would agree that that there should be more adequate oversight of law enforcement agencies, that the FBI is not perfect. The FBI, the other thing that's been going on is the Olympic team trainer physician.
FBI for a year knew about it. 40 more
right,
people
and that's a slightly more complicated issue, because typically that's the kind of thing that local law enforcement would investigate.
Well, it's also different because the President of the United States is not the one trashing the FBI for their behavior in the Nassar case.
And exactly, and if the fundamental rule of any kind of administrative law is that if you are involved, if you are a principal in whatever the issue is, the investigation, an adjudication, you should not be a part of it. And the President has violated that fundamental rule by constantly commenting on this process and engaging in it.
He's taking great pains to point out that he's not trashing the FBI. He's trashing the people.
He says it's a disgrace.
He's trashing the people involved in this, but he continues to praise the rank and file of the FBI because he knows it's ridiculous not to. And the rank and file of the FBI have nothing to do
But he
with
should be saying nothing.
He should be saying nothing. And threatens to resign. Isn't he, by definition, taking on the head of the FBI?
No, he's not. He has repeatedly praised the men and women of the FBI who do their job honestly every day. So to twist it around and say he's attacking the whole FBI, that's not accurate.
One last thing. We only have a minute left. Republicans overwhelmingly, with the exception of John McCain, Trey Gowdy, and a few others, have supported the president on this thing. Do you worry that if Bob Mueller does come down with a bill of particulars against the president of the United States, that the Republicans in Congress are going to treat that the way they have treated this?
Facts seem to be in short supply in the consideration and deliberations of our government, and I do worry about that.
Should Mueller be respected?
I think, Mueller is a very well thought of person. He's by all accounts, a very qualified individual.
Do you worry that Republicans in the Congress are just going to say it's a political thing? We proved it with this Nunes memo.
Well, I'm not sure. I worry about a lot of things. That's not what I worry about. But, facts do matter. And the fact here is this was a political document paid for by the DNC and Hillary Clinton and by an FBI.
Those funders, by the way, were Republicans.
And Steele was an FBI informant, which is also odd.
But it does not mean that it's not true. Just because it's biased does not mean that it's not true.
We got to go.
And maybe a judge should have heard that.
Renee, nice to see you. Brian, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for your time.